My name is Uehara Keji, and I am a traveler. I am 25 years old this year. At present, I am in Tokyo and work at the Metropolitan Police Department. I am a diligent and hardworking police officer. I enjoy fishing, going to a tavern, and occasionally even going for a hot break and a leisurely trip. I live a comfortable and enjoyable life. Although my immediate supervisor is named Momo Shisan, and there are also police elites such as Miyako Sato, Renzaburo Shiratori, and Takashi among my colleagues, I still maintain a record of paid toileting and slacking off without anyone noticing. Until one day, the silly guy named Conan gave me a shot in the neck. Since then, I have become the darling of my immediate supervisor, Momo Shisan, and have been awarded a new title. Uehara brother. Keywords of the novel. Conan's new police story. No pop-ups. Conan's new police story TXT complete collection download. Conan's new police story latest chapter reading. Chapter 1, I didn't have a vacation today. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1, I didn't have a vacation today. Dear audience friends, hello everyone. Welcome to our Morning Express every Monday morning on time. I am the host, Fujiya Castle. I am the host Yuko Tanaka. Tokyo, Moon Shadow Island. In the slightly messy hotel bedroom, clearly on the TV screen that was forgotten to turn off last night, two well-dressed hosts were telling each other the various news that happened in Tokyo yesterday. Among them, the frequency of the words, police station, and police, is surprisingly high. In the center of the room, on a soft sky-gray bed, a figure curled up and buried in bed was still in a sweet sleep, seemingly not awakened by the TV program. According to the official report from the police department, the culprit who killed the general manager of the Hatchling Bank was arrested by the police last night. It is reported that the famous high school student detective, Shinichi Kudo, made outstanding contributions to the police's investigation. Hey! Is that Mr. Kudo again? It's really amazing, but at the age of 17, he can help the police solve so many cases. No wonder he's known as the Sherlock Holmes of the Heisei era. Black silk. What black silk? The man, wrapped in a blanket and playing with the granddaughter of Duke Zhou, on the bed, seemed to have heard something extraordinary in a hazy way. His heavy eyelids struggled extremely hard for a few times before finally catching the light shining in at the corner of the curtain. It's very eye-catching. Drowsy-eyed, he lifted the blanket and sat up from the bed. The man leaned against the soft bag decoration at the head of the bed and yawned several times before reaching out to scratch his slightly itchy scalp. After a night of torment, his slightly naturally curly hair had already fallen into a messy bird's nest. A close-up shot of the famous high school student detective Shinichi Kudo was immediately reflected in the pupils of the TV screen, which had been dormant all night. In the close-up, the program team even thoughtfully placed 3 lines of slogans for him: Sherlock Holmes from the Heisei era, the savior of Japanese police, genius high school detective. The man who didn't see what he wanted to see fell into contemplation. So what I heard in my sleep was actually Holmes, not black silk. How did he listen to the fork in the gap between Japanese English and Chinese? Ringing bells. While on a routine daydream after waking up, a sudden ringing of the phone on the bedside table suddenly interrupted the man's meaningless associations. Hello. Hello, Mr. Uehara. I am a front desk staff member at the hotel. It's like this. The police have sent you a package. May I ask when would be convenient for you to come and pick it up? Did the package come from the police? I understand. I'll go down and pick it up in about half an hour. Estimating the time it will take for me to wash and use the restroom, Uehara Keji gave a rough answer. At present, he is still on vacation and doesn't need to squat in the toilet for 45 minutes like when he works at the police station. Unfortunately, this good day hasn't been long. Lazily getting out of bed, standing in front of the window, pulling open the curtains and enjoying the sunshine, Uehara restrained himself and stretched his limbs to his heart's content. He stretched out a big lazy waist, feeling so comfortable that the ending almost turned into a moan. In a few more days, his vacation will come to an end, and he will return to the police station where he checks in and out every day. He will be a little transparent behind his boss, Mizuki, and rely on his genius high school detective, Shinichi Kudo, to mix up his crime-solving bonus and year. End performance. For Uehara Keji, who worked as a lawyer in his previous life, the feeling of having money without thinking and just running to the crime scene is really satisfying and addictive. Choosing to take the police exam after graduating from KO and gambling that I would be left at the police station was indeed the right choice. He is already addicted. As for the reputation of Japanese police, that thing has long been ruined. Even the senior management of the police station can't manage it, it's none of his business to get paid. His immediate superior, Megumi 13, has gone through 2 generations of Kudo brothers. Kudo Yosuke and Kudo Shinichi. Speaking of which, when did Shinichi Kudo become Conan? So far, my vacation and work hours seem to be normal. As he walked into the bathroom and picked up a teacup to wash up, Uehara Keiji listened to 2 hosts praising the genius high school detective on the bedroom TV. He picked up the old-fashioned straight-button phone in his floral shorts pocket and glanced at the date and time. It has been 25 years since he was reborn in this world, and he has never experienced the widely rumored Kushue time in his previous life. He has lived steadily from childhood to adulthood. Although it was the beginning of a regular welfare institution, fortunately his academic foundation was good. Although he couldn't pass the entrance exam for the medical department of the law department of Dongfeng University, he could at least be considered a top private student, satisfied. After finishing washing up, I put on a vacation-themed floral shirt to cover my sharp 6-pack abs. Then, Uehara restrained himself and walked out of the hotel room, humming a tune and taking the elevator straight down to the first floor. "Hello miss, I am Keiji Uehara from 603. I just contacted the front desk by phone half an hour ago. Is there a package for me here?" Pacing to the front desk, Uehara Keiji leaned down slightly with one hand against the table, smiling and asking the front desk staff member in front of him who had a slightly impatient expression after being stunned. Yes. Mr. Uehara, is this your package? Then please sign on this record." As her fingers accidentally touched it, she handed a box of only A4 paper length to the man in front of and behind him. The receptionist quickly took out her favorite pen and the wine shop record book, and her earlobes on both sides showed a slight imperceptible blush. Uehara Keiji, who maintained a smile throughout, signed his name, feeling in his heart that the innocent girls in Conan's world were truly beautiful. I tore open the packaging on the outside of the cardboard box on the spot, and then opened the box. A stack of ancient and yellowed music scores lay quietly inside, and a sense of historical antiquity rushed in. Beethoven's Moonlight. An extremely classic piano piece, which is also what Uehara Keiji is going to do at the end of his vacation. He doesn't know if what he's doing is right or not, nor does he know if it's effective, let alone if it's useful, but at least he wants to do it. Because he is a police officer. Of course, it may also be because he is truly a good person at heart. This world is so beautiful, wouldn't it be better to have fewer tragedies within our means that we can remember? As he hummed a tune in his mouth, Uehara Keiji paced towards the hotel entrance, still flipping through the moonlight sheet in his hand. Unfortunately, it's mostly because he doesn't have any artistic bacteria, so he can't read a word of this score vertically or horizontally. Numb. This sunny and snowy piano is still not suitable for him. Female idols like Yoko Okano are the dishes that suit him. Uehara Keiji, who closed the box, took out a straight phone with his right hand from the pocket of his floral pants. Just as he was about to make a call, a sudden call suddenly caught his eye, Miyako Sato. This is the name of the note. Uehara Keiji raised his eyebrows in surprise and pressed the answer button, saying, "Yo Sato. What's up with calling me? Are you trying to figure it out and ready to listen to my aunt's words and go on vacation with me?" A long silence suddenly came from the other end of the phone. Hello, hello. Are you having a bad signal? Miyako Sato, who was searching the office area of the 3rd Department at the Tokyo Metropolitan Police Station, closed her eyes and took a deep breath. She kept telling herself in her heart that this man always speaks with such an open and offensive tone, and then helplessly said, Uehara, did you think that vacation was foolish for you? The Momo Police Department received a report from the amusement park stating that there had been a vicious murder and they were ordering people to go with him. Where are you? Uehara Keji, who was walking on the beach of Moon Shadow Island with a floral shirt, floral shorts, and flip-flops on his nose, stiffened at the words and said, Ah. So I didn't have a vacation today, did I? Cute new arrival, seeking votes and support set up a small bowl, end of this chapter. Chapter 2. I have a gift for you. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. I have a gift for you, do I have to work today? What do you think? If you ask me, I shouldn't be working today. Do you think the Momo Police Department will believe this reason? Anyway, he doesn't know that I'm absent from work. He'll make up for my attendance another day, even if I'm out of work. That's it, I'm still busy. If it's okay, I'll hang up for now. Uehara, you. Senior Sato. Please do it. Before Sato Miko could speak, only a few busy beeps could be heard on the phone. After hanging up the phone, Uehara Keji pondered for a while and felt that something was not quite right. So I lit up my phone again, flipped through the calendar on top, and the numbers on the screen were displayed very clearly. Today should still be during his vacation, why should he go to work? Could it be that Miyako Sato remembered the wrong day? Or did he remember wrong? Uehara Keji is not very willing to delve into the possibility of the final outcome, because it means it is his fault. However, fortunately, his presence within the 3 series is not very high during the current search, so there should be nothing wrong and he won't be discovered. Even if Momo 13 wants to take people to the crime scene, according to past practice, it should be prioritized to take the wealthy second-generation Shiratori Renzaburo or the serious and responsible Sato, rather than his less witty little transparent. After all, after graduating from the police academy, he was assigned to work in the search department. He belongs to the junior class here, and the senior who familiarized him with the work was Miyako Sato instead of Mizuki Momo. If we really count it up, he probably doesn't know Momo Shisan very well either, it's just an ordinary hierarchical relationship. At least a person is also a police department with real power. There are so many police officers under his command that I probably won't remember him for a while. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that this was right, so I decisively walked towards the sunshine, beach, and bikini. Anyway, I will be recorded as absent from work. Let's talk about tomorrow and enjoy today's last day of vacation. Uncle, could you please bring 2 sun lounging chairs and a glass of cold watermelon juice? After paying the money and finding a good location to camp, Uehara Keji leaned on and pretended to erect a newspaper. Slightly curling up his right leg, his eyes under the sunglasses were all focused on the bikini women playing beach volleyball not far away, and he took a sip of chilled watermelon juice when his mouth was dry. He really loves beach volleyball. When I see my strong interest, I may feel that the slightly naturally curled hair fluttering in the wind is a bit troublesome. So Uehara Keji took off a rubber band from his wrist, tried his best to tilt his hair back to the temples, and then simply tied a refreshing ponytail, leaving 2 thin strands of bangs hanging down in front of his forehead as embellishments. You told me yesterday that you wanted me to come here this morning just to lie here with you and watch beach volleyball, right? Just as the volleyball match was coming to an end, a beautiful figure wearing a white coat immediately appeared behind the side of the sun lounger, hands in pockets, and words filled with helplessness. What's wrong? Can't we? Volleyball matches are so beautiful. I love watching volleyball matches the most. On the recliner, Uehara Keji folded down the newspaper and slightly pulled down the sunglasses that were used as a cover on the bridge of his nose with his right hand. He proudly raised his eyebrows and his left thumb crossed the empty chair next to him, saying, "See, I have specially prepared the best viewing seat for you. How about that? I'm honest. If it's okay, I'll go back to the clinic." Ase sighed honestly, but his figure under his white coat never moved forward. "I'm very busy. Come on, I've known you for a year now. Every time I come to Moon Shadow Island for vacation, I see that there are more doctors and nurses than patients in the clinic where you work, and there's not much business. You're so busy." Regarding the man's sharp comments on his career in front of him, Ase honestly fell into silence and could not refute them. He got to know him a year ago, when rainstorms suddenly broke out on Uehara Island, which was originally a holiday resort at that time. When he came to the island by boat for his first holiday, he was caught unprepared by God and got soaked. He had to find the nearest place to shelter from the rain. Coincidentally, the closest and rainproof room to Uehara Keji at the time was the Moon Shadow Island clinic where he worked. As a result, he met this police officer from the Tokyo Metropolitan Police Department and strangely became friends with him. Therefore, the fact that the Moon Shadow Island clinic does not have many patients thriving throughout the year cannot be concealed from Uehara. After all, this is a vacation island, with the total number of islanders here, unlike hospitals in Tokyo that are full of patients. "Come and sit down, there's something really going on. I have a gift for you." Gift. Upon hearing this, Shinichi Ase was stunned and instinctively moved his gaze to the approximately A4-length cardboard box under Uehara Keji's recliner. This guy shouldn't it be thinking about her role as a female doctor on the island over the years? Ase's honest eyelids twitched slightly as she said, "We're all so familiar now, so we don't need any gifts. Today is not a holiday or a birthday. Alright, stop pulling and pulling, quickly sit down and pull down." Ase honestly hesitated for a while, and in an instant, 7 or 8 templates of friendly language used by women to reject men popped up in his mind. Slowly moving his steps to the edge of the chair, he sat down. Just as he was about to speak, he saw Uehara Keji throwing the box into his arms. "Hey! You!" The honest gaze of Ase, who was busy and steady, followed the open corner of the cardboard box. He didn't see any roses or confessions or decorations, but instead a clearly yellowed old sheet music. He breathed a sigh of relief in his heart. "It's okay. What is this? Where did you find it and personally give it to me?" Ase's relaxed and honest tone was tinged with a hint of mockery. "A police colleague of mine gave it to me, and he searched for it in his reading glasses for a long time before finding it. This is the only piano score in the world, extremely precious." With his hands resting on his head, he found a comfortable position and then lay down again, feeling satisfied. "The only piano score in the world. I don't know how to play the piano. What's the point of giving me this one?" The smiling expression froze on Ase's honest face as he unfolded the sheet music. His pupils, which had suddenly contracted due to shock, were hard to conceal, and he fell brightly under Uehara's restrained gaze. "Honesty, you must live well alone." The sheet music that Uehara Keji couldn't understand, but Ase was honest and could see the hidden information in just a few glances. "What is this?" Ase honestly stood up suddenly, took several steps back in a row, and vigilantly watched the figure lying on the sun visor, legs crossed and swaying. Uehara restrained himself. "How about it, are you satisfied with this gift, Masahiro Aso?" Uehara Keji, who had pulled his sunglasses down half of his nose and revealed his eyes, turned his head and asked with a smile. Request for votes and support. Set up a small bowl. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Smuggling Case on Moon Shadow Island. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Smuggling Case on Moon Shadow Island. Ase is honest, originally named Masayoshi. The son of pianist Keiji Aso, due to his weak and sickly physique at a young age, his adult body is relatively thin and weak compared to ordinary men, and he looks generally comparable to women. 12 years ago, after his family was burned to death in a large fire, Xiao Chengshi, who was receiving treatment at a Tokyo hospital, was adopted and later changed his name to Shinji Ase. Due to suspicions about the deaths of his father, mother, and sister, Masashi Aso, who graduated from medical school, began practicing dressing up as a man and skillfully mastering the techniques of disguise and onomatopoeia. He returned to his hometown of Tsukikage Island as a female physician named Ase Shinichi, and began investigating the truth behind his family's death. I have been here for 3 years now. Hard work pays off for those who have a heart. A year ago, Masashi Aso, who had already fully understood the truth about his family's death, hesitated whether he would implement the planned revenge and murder plan. Then he met Tokyo police officer Yuki Uehara, who had infiltrated the Moon Shadow Island clinic to avoid the rain. He didn't want to have too much involvement with the police, but in the end, he became friends with this man by chance. It was precisely because of this that Aso Chingshi's heart became increasingly conflicted about whether or not to kill someone. He wanted revenge, but unfortunately, the kind education he received from childhood to adulthood has been urging him to stop. He wanted to stop, but whenever he wanted to give up, the old texts of his family dying in the fire repeatedly stimulated his nerves. For this reason, he even had the idea of writing a teaser letter to Tokyo's notorious high school detective, Shinichi Kudo, before committing murder, to see if he could come over and stop his thoughts before he did. The two thoughts of continuing and giving up have not been able to distinguish between high and low in Aso Chingshi's mind until now. He thought he would continue to suffer, but he didn't expect that today's Uehara Keji would reveal his true identity, making him forget his troubles while also giving him a sheet of music. In theory, it should be the score left by his father Keiji Aso before his death. Your reaction has already told me everything, so there's no need to say anything insincere, so as not to waste everyone's time. With a light smile, Uehara Keji withdrew his gaze and rested his hands on the back of his head, his right leg curled up in a regular motion, and he said loudly. Ma Gingsheng opened his mouth, but he couldn't say the following words despite spinning around his throat several times. He doesn't understand that his disguise should be seamless. In the past 3 years on the island, even if no one sees through that they are actually a man, why would Uehara restrain himself? Who are you really? Why do you know all this? Where did this score come from? Aso Chingshi, who quickly forced himself to calm down and gradually moved his steps back a bit, asked. How could an ordinary Tokyo police officer have had the leisure to investigate him? There must be a ghost involved. At the moment when his identity was exposed, Masashi Aso began to doubt whether Uehara Keji, who had a close personal relationship with him over the past year, was truly a police officer from the Metropolitan Police Department, as he claimed. Upon hearing this, Uehara Keji pulled out his left hand, which was resting on his head, and leaned into his beach pants pocket to retrieve a document. He flew into Aso's arms and said, My name is Uehara Keji. Currently, I work in the Violent Crime Department of the Criminal Investigation Department of the Metropolitan Police Department. I am a police officer and this is my document. As you can see, I'm not lying. Looking at the face with a particularly bright smile on the ID photo, Aso Chingshi suddenly fell silent. As for why I knew all this, I have to mention a prisoner I arrested a year and a half ago. As if ready to tell a story, Uehara Keji shook his hand and sat up straight. He was arrested on suspicion of murder and drug trafficking. Although the prisoner refused to explain, I still traced the source of his drug acquisition to the holy land of Moon Shadow Island based on some clues. However, as you know, this matter is usually not under the jurisdiction of the Violent Crime Department I belong to. According to my colleague, I have already arrested the person at the source, so I came to Moon Shadow Island just for a vacation a year ago. However, I didn't expect to encounter something, which made me remember my suspicion of this island and secretly launched a little investigation. Speaking of which, as if to enhance the credibility of his words, Uehara Keji also raised his right hand and used his thumb to pull the end of his tail finger, indicating that he had only checked a little. It has been proven that my speculation a year and a half ago was correct, and my colleague only caught a few small minions at the beginning. There are still people on Moon Shadow Island who are disguised as secretly selling drugs under the guise of the bustling scenery, and I found a very strange point in the transaction ledger of one of the drug traffickers. There was a name called Keiji Aso that appeared several times in the ledger, but starting 12 years ago, this name suddenly disappeared from the ledger, leaving only the names of 3 other drug traffickers' leaders. Speaking of this, Uehara Keji raised his eyes and suddenly became sharp, staring straight at Aso Narumi with furrowed brows. Out of curiosity, I checked and found out that he and his family died in a fire on a full moon night 12 years ago. I thought this line would end here, but later I discovered that Keiji Aso had a young son named Aso who was receiving treatment in Tokyo. After the fire, Aso was adopted by the Ase family and changed his name to Ase Shinji. No, it's not like that. My father didn't know it was a drug at first, they just entrusted him, as a pianist, to help bring something back from abroad. It was their accomplice who handed it over to my father. Aso Narumi, who had been silent for a long time, spoke up. Although she was still a female voice, her tone was already very different. Because they were playmates who grew up together, my father helped me a few times. But later on, when my father realized something was wrong and wanted to quit, these 3 people came to my father and asked him to continue, claiming that he could receive dividends, but he refused. So they killed him, as well as my mother and sister. After coming to the island 3 years ago, Masayoshi Ase, who has been secretly investigating, met the dead former village head, Gue Shanyong, and voluntarily admitted that he was the son of Keir Aso and wanted to ask him something. Under the shocking result, Gue Shanyong suffered from heart paralysis and died, making it difficult for immortals to save him. All that Aso Narumi knew about his father was also derived from the self-talk of Yoshitaka Kamiyama before his death. So, do you think your father is not an accomplice of Yoshitaka Kamiyama and others? Uehara Keji raised an eyebrow from Aso Narumi's mouth as he heard about the death of Keiji Aso, feeling somewhat surprised. No, absolutely not, Aso Chingsher took a deep breath and responded sternly. So why did you deliberately dress up as a man and come from Tokyo to Moon Shadow Island? If you're not inheriting an inheritance, you want to seek revenge in a different way. Aso Chingsher didn't know how to answer for a moment. He really wants revenge. But the key is that Uehara Keiji is a police officer. Can you say this in front of him? Request for tickets and follow. Up reading set up a small bowl, end of this chapter. Chapter 4. I have a careful infiltration plan. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Chapter 4. I have a careful infiltration plan. It is obvious that Aso Narumi has once again fallen into silence. He is unable to answer the question of Uehara's restraint, as once answered, it will inevitably reveal the truth. And the hidden serial murder plan only exists in his mind, without any written expression, even no matter how clever Uehara Keiji is, it is impossible to guess. As long as he doesn't say anything. Forget it, asking is also asking for nothing. Seeing that Aso Narumi was delayed in answering, Uehara Keiji patted his knees and slowly stood up from the sun visor chair, lazily stretching his waist. At the same time, his gaze also turned to the beautiful women who had already finished the beach volleyball game not far away. Do you want to help us, as our relationship has been good since we met for a year? Aso Chingsher also glanced at the most beautiful scenery on the beach and said, Can I help you get your contact information? That's not necessary, I prefer to eat alone. You're quite picky. Being picky is not a bad thing. Uehara Keiji, who had taken off his sunglasses and played with them, turned over and smiled. To get to the point, do you have any idea of seeking revenge? Aso Chingsher, who was in a state of uncertainty, did not answer, but shook his head very decisively. Don't worry, this is not deceiving you. We have known each other for a year, and our relationship is here. What are we deceiving you for? I never thought that a friend who has known me for a year would secretly investigate me out of suspicion. Occupational diseases, don't worry. Understanding. I'm serious, don't you want revenge? Use your own hands and feet, and take action to send the culprit who once killed your family to a dark prison, enjoying indescribable imprisonment. There was a hint of seriousness between his eyebrows. Uehara Keji spoke slowly and his words were particularly heavy. When it landed in Masanori's ears, it was like a thunderous explosion, leaving him frozen in place for a moment. What? Can you still send them to jail? It's not me, it's you. Uehara Keji shook his head and pointed his right index finger at the man with a furrowed brow in front of him, saying, I have mastered their crime of drug trafficking and murder. Now, all I need to do is take the account books of those 3 mastermind leaders who are hiding at home. I can immediately call a truck of bread men to come and arrest them, and send them to eat their lifelong imprisonment. Also Qingshi looked puzzled and said, a truck full of bread men. I'm used to saying that. It's not important, what's important is whether you do it or not. Uehara Keji, who was too lazy to explain, walked up to him in 3 or 2 steps and asked seriously. What does it have to do with me if you need an account book? There is no denying that also Qingshi is a bit excited. The reason why he wants to kill for revenge is not only because of the element of blood debt and blood compensation, but also because he cannot find any other means of revenge besides seeking revenge. If he could personally send those 3 scum who killed his own family to prison for a lifetime, it would undoubtedly be a form of revenge for him, who is already struggling whether he really wants to kill and bleed. On the surface, I am just a vacationer and I am not familiar with those 3 suspects. There is no better way to enter their residence and search for the remaining 2 account books. You are different. You are a doctor who has been on Moon Shadow Island for 3 years. The people here are already very familiar with you and won't be wary. The most important thing is that you are a woman, or rather, you are now openly a woman. Uehara Keji pointed to the towering chest of Masanori and said with a serious expression, speaking of which, what are you doing? Get lost. Also Qingshi's face turned black, and he gritted his teeth before finishing his words before turning around and leaving. Uehara restrained himself and kept up, muttering while still keeping up, hey. It's real. Don't walk so fast. Why are you going? You haven't even finished speaking yet. Go to your doorstep for medical disinfection. If you don't hurry up, make sure the sun sets. Disinfection. Are you still in the mood to work now? How can I get things without finding a reason to work? Which house should we go to first? Kawashima Hideo. The figure walking and talking gradually disappeared on the beach of Moon Shadow Island, leaving only an unfinished cup of chilled watermelon juice sitting on the lounge chair, enjoying the warm sea breeze. Also Qingshi did not ask why Uehara Keji, who had already seen 1 ledger, needed his own help to retrieve the other 2. Of course, perhaps he already had an answer in his mind. Some things don't need to be asked much. 2 hours later, Magunshi, dressed as a doctor, stood in front of the Kawashima family gate, holding a medicine box and ringing the doorbell of the estate. As the wealthiest asset holder on Moon Shadow Island, 56-year-old Hideo Kawashima knows how to enjoy himself very much. The villa and estate he once specially designed for himself by the famous architect Emperor Moriya in Tokyo can be said to be the most luxurious place on the entire Moon Shadow Island, without any other options. Pinching the female voice, Aso Narumi, who looked like a big sister, quickly entered this highly symmetrical and beautiful building under the guidance of the estate maid. I'm really sorry, Mr. Kawashima. Due to the recent village chief election, there has been an increase in the number of things in the clinic. That's why I was wondering if I could come in advance to have your family members undergo a physical examination. Thank you very much for your understanding. Pushing open the door of the villa, Aso Qingshi walked into the living room and saw the middle-aged man waiting here. His slightly grayish hair combed back into a big back, and his appearance seemed a bit harsh to him. Kawashima Hideo. One of the perpetrators who killed his family 12 years ago is now a well-known wealthy man on Moon Shadow Island, and also the candidate with the highest support from the villagers in this year's village chief election. Don't be so restrained, Miss Ase. Hideo Kawashima, who wanted to maintain his external image, smiled kindly and said, "The village chief election is such a big deal, and some people outside are holding banners every day to oppose the current village chief's measures, which has led to conflicts. It's not surprising that the clinic is busy. I understand." Aso, who showed an excited expression, gently stroked his chest with one hand and bowed slightly. "Yes, then I'll go up first." "Thank you very much, Miss Ase." Always remembering what Uehara had said to him before setting off, Aso's honest face suddenly became solemn as he turned around. The next second, he pressed the phone button in his pocket. Outside the estate, Uehara Keji, who couldn't get in, felt a vibration, and the corner of his mouth, chewing gum, then slightly raised. Wearing sunglasses and still dressed in a floral shirt, beach pants, and flip-flops, he immediately reached out and lowered the brim of his straw hat, bent down to pick up a stone that had been prepared for a long time from the ground, and vigorously exerted himself. Bang! The crisp sound of glass cracking spread throughout the entire villa in an instant, and Hideo Kawashima, who had just sat down in the living room, suddenly changed his face and shouted angrily, "Who? You still want to be the village chief? Fuck you." The pre-recorded loudspeaker began to play a loop of sounds that were enough to further anger Hideo Kawashima. After spitting out his chewing gum, Uehara Keji threw a stone inside and smashed a glass. "Everyone, get him. Get this bastard for me." Angry and enraged, Kawashima Hideo was so angry that his large back, which had been fixed with hair gel, was a bit scattered. He pointed to Uehara Keji, who was running away with his back exposed, and roared. The security personnel who spent a lot of money to hire suddenly poured out, and even Aso Narumi, who had just arrived on the second floor, almost collided with the bodyguards who came down from the third floor. Aso Chingshir, who had nothing to do, silently walked up the empty third floor, his eyes twitching a few times. He remembered the words that Uehara Keji had sworn before coming, "Don't worry, I have a meticulous plan to infiltrate." Request ticket request followed. Up reading set up a small stall and set up a small bowl. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Sorry, I will return it to you. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Sorry, I will return it to you. The quality of the bodyguards hired by this wealthy person is not very good either. TSK, money is really easy to earn. After flipping out of the container group in the seaside alley with ease, Uehara Keji took out a box of chewing gum from his pocket and patted two of them, flying into his mouth to chew on them. Looking into the distance, the bodyguards who were chasing someone shook their heads repeatedly. Even with this professional competence, one can still make a living. But when I think about it, even the security personnel of top Japanese politicians are just like that. It's not difficult to understand why these bags of wine and rice cannot catch up with people. The various projects under the Suzuki Foundation, which stands at the pinnacle of the world's financial conglomerates, are often touched by criminals to install bombs. Hey! Stop! What are you doing here? As he turned around and was about to leave, an old man holding a harpoon fishing net was riding his bicycle in a hurry. After getting off the car, he solemnly raised his fork and aimed it at Uehara Keji. He gasped and stopped his way. "Is that the damn thief who stole seafood you? How could you smell such a strong seafood smell while hiding in the tent behind the container?" "Uncle, I'm not a thief. You can tell from my clothes that I'm clearly here on vacation." Kamehara Keiji, chewing gum, raised his hands to show that he had no ill intentions. "And what do you think I'm stealing from all over? Why are you sneaking around if you don't steal? I've seen you from a long distance, and I've been paying attention to you for a long time. How could a normal person be like a thief? With such long hair, you can even learn to tie a ponytail like the inexperienced little son from the neighboring family, Tian Soa, and he knows how to fool around all day long. Upon hearing this, Uehara Keji widened his eyes and said, "Grandpa, why did you open your mouth to slander people? And to be honest, why did you still attack them personally? Shouldn't you be the one shouting to catch thieves yourself? These seafood are all mine, what thief should I shout to catch?" The old man with grey temples was so angry that he even trembled with his harpoon. A few days ago, things were inexplicably less stored in the tent after being exposed to the sun. After squatting for so many days, I finally found a suspicious person sneaking around my tent, and ended up being bitten back by a thief shouting to catch the thief. Alarm must be triggered. Don't move, I'll call the police right now. Don't be so troublesome, I'm the police. As soon as the old man said he wanted to find the police, Uehara felt relieved. Didn't that happen to hit him in his major? The old colleague from Moon Shadow Island searched for the music scores for most of the night last night and woke up early this morning to deliver his things to the hotel. He is probably still at home to catch up on his sleep. Are you a police officer? The old man sneered and looked at the young man in front of him a few times. Although he didn't finish speaking, his meaning was already evident in his posture. How could there be such a sneaky and carefree police officer? I have identification. Uehara Keji's right hand was just about to poke towards the pocket of his beach pants, wanting to obtain his police officer certificate to prove his innocence. However, out of the corner of his eye, he suddenly glanced at his side and back. The group of bodyguards dressed in uniform black suits actually circled around and ran back. Found it. It's right there. It's important to catch Mr. Kawashima, who is currently in the critical period of having the highest support rate for the election. It's easy for someone to write articles about what happened just now, and we need to catch them to explain it clearly. Although due to the distance, Uehara Keji couldn't hear what these people were saying clearly, he could still see the neat and uniform movements. He can fight with one, but it's not impossible to fight with two. It's okay to fight with three, but now 8 or more people. He is not a superhero wearing underwear and outerwear. Farewell. Uncle. I'll lend you a harpoon to use. Uehara Keji, who made a decision in the blink of an eye, reached out and snatched the slender harpoon from the old man's hand, then turned around and threw it towards the group of burly men in the back and side. I never expected that there would be someone so bold as to grab things in broad daylight. The old man was stunned and said, "Hey. You. Uncle. I will compensate you for the harpoon money later." Looking around, upon seeing the bicycle that the old man had ridden before, Uehara Keji's eyes lit up and he took a few steps forward before jumping over the old man and getting on the bicycle. "Hey. Why are you grabbing everything? That's my car." "I'm sorry, old man, I will repay you." The man stomped on his feet, and his 2 wheels instantly turned to the flying bicycle, riding away like dust in the distance. The old man with dull eyes could only hear the angry apology of Uehara Keiji lingering in his ears for a moment. The speed of restraining oneself with a mount bonus is terrifying, and it quickly gets away from the group of bodyguards who are still relentlessly chasing behind. Make way, make way. Please make way, thank you. Be careful, there's a car coming. Please make way. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Give way, give way. After causing a stir along the way, Uehara Keiji, who had successfully caused a riot, swung his dragon tail and rode his bicycle through the alley. The 2 sturdy wheels of the car were borne on the steps and launched, going through dozens of steep slopes before finally breaking free from the final pursuit. Hiss. After braking, I quickly got out of the car and rubbed my buttocks, causing me to grit my teeth in pain. I really suffer. Fortunately, he has also trained his gluteal muscles. Why should I be such a damn kind-hearted person? Isn't it uncomfortable to take a good vacation and sunbathe? Looking up at the sun hanging high in the azure sky, as he pushed the cart and rubbed his back and buttocks, Uehara restrained himself and began to blame himself. How to say today is the last day of the holiday? Well, no, strictly speaking, today is a working day. It's okay then. As a criminal police officer, his daily work is so simple and impulsive. Uehara, who is good at self-comfort and self-regulation, quickly found a reason for himself. When Aso Narumi, who was carrying an account book in the medical kit, saw Uehara restraining himself while pushing a bicycle and limping, Ben's expression of suppressed joy suddenly changed. "What's wrong with you? You were caught up and beaten up." As he spoke, he prepared to squat down and open the medical box. "No, I twisted my butt while riding a bicycle." Aso Chingshir, who had a professional physician qualification certificate, was stunned. "Have you found anything?" Uehara Keji didn't explain much and asked his friend in reverse. "I found it, but... Where did you buy this bicycle?" "Oh, this one." Uehara Keji patted the cushion with his right hand and said with a strong breath, "I borrowed it." "Borrowed." "Snatched it." Moon Shadow Island Police Station, record room. An old man with blonde hair excitedly recorded a statement in front of the police. "That bastard snatched my harpoon with just one reach out. He snatched my bicycle with just another walk. The key is that he snatched it in front of me in broad daylight." Request ticket request follow. Up reading set up a small bowl, end of this chapter. Chapter 6. Sato, help me. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. The source has no content or has errors. Chapter 7. Never want to eat barbecue again. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Chapter 7. Never want to eat barbecue again. Cases related to drugs are often extremely risky, especially for the police investigating cases. Since he decided to arrest the Moon Shadow Island drug trafficking group led by Akira Kuriyama, Hideo Kawashima, and Ken Nishimoto, he has been prepared to deal with the risks. The reason why he spoke up now is also to give a reminder to Aso Narumi, who has not gone through these things. I still don't understand why you want to get yourself involved in this vortex. Aso Chingshir, who had already figured out the risks in his mind, looked into his friend's eyes with a hint of confusion in his tone. If I remember correctly, the Violent Crimes Search Department you are in is responsible for murder cases, right? The current case of Moon Shadow Island, to put it bluntly, could be related to the killing of Keiji Aso 12 years ago, but it has already been 12 years and the case has long been closed. Faced with confusion, Uehara Keji grinned and turned to face the distant coastline, stretching lazily. He replied, "Do you know that since I can remember, I have admired those who perform exceptionally well in their studies. This feeling has become even stronger since I passed the KO exam. I can only get into Chinying with all my hard work, so I'm thinking about how strong those who can get into the medical and legal departments of Peking University should be. In fact, studying well is just about studying well, and the medical department of East University is not as beautiful as you imagine." Aso Chingshir, who had guessed the answer in his heart, walked forward with one hand in his pocket and a medicine box in his hand. He stood shoulder to shoulder with his friend and smiled with relief, saying, "They are also human beings and may have thoughts of killing. Coincidentally, I happen to be responsible for the murder case." Uehara restrained himself and turned his head, just as Aso Narumi also turned his head to look over. With four eyes facing each other, everything is in silence. For a long time, Masashi Aso finally broke the silence and smiled happily, "Thank you, Uehara. You're welcome, just treat me to dinner. What do you want to eat?" "Anything is fine. I didn't even have breakfast, so I drank a glass of watermelon juice. I'm starving to death, so I'm not picky." The figure of the conversation gradually merged into the crowd of vacationers on Moon Shadow Island. Half an hour later, Moon Island, Ikeda Barbecue Restaurant. "Miss Waiter, could you please have 4 signature grilled meat combos?" The lion, who lifted the door curtain and restrained himself, spoke loudly. The young lady who immediately stepped forward to serve, with a surprised expression, scanned the man and woman in front of her back and forth, saying, "Dr. Ase." Having been on Moon Shadow Island for so long, she had never seen Dr. Ase and any male friend go out alone to have barbecue. "He has a big appetite, it's okay, it's just 4 servings, Ase," who thought the little girl was scared, added with a gentle tone. "Even though the portions are small, I suspect that all 4 are not enough to eat. If it weren't for your low salary working in a small place like Moon Shadow Island Clinic, I would have thought of ordering 7 or 8 portions." I casually found an empty table in the hall, and Uehara sat comfortably on the chair, starting to play with the clips. The sincerity in his words made Aso Narumi roll his eyes and say, "So I still have to thank you for thinking about my wallet." "You are welcome. I'll have 2 more bottles of beer, thank you," he said with a dignified wave of his hand as he climbed up the pole. "Be careful of alcoholic liver disease." As a licensed physician, Masashi Aso provides dietary advice from his professional perspective. Don't drink if you have the ability. Uehara Keji took the cups, bowls, and chopsticks handed over by the waiter's little sister, arranged all the barbecue plates one by one, and casually filled the cups, saying, "Maybe this is our last meal. If you don't feel comfortable, it's worth it. Are you sure they can find us so quickly? It should be okay here, small shop, just over a year old." Aso Narumi, who has not been in contact with drug trafficking groups, didn't understand Uehara's repeated cautious remarks. "I'm not sure, but Moon Shadow Island is just that big. Once they discover that the ledger is missing, they will immediately conduct an investigation. It's very fast to find us both. The venue restrictions are placed here. If you want to take a boat off the island, you haven't bought a ticket yet, and the passenger flow is booming. The passenger ships on Moon Shadow Island are already too busy today. You should know that our opponents now are one village chief with real power and the other is the wealthiest capitalist on the island." Looking up, he drank the first glass of wine in one gulp, and some mellow and fragrant liquid dripped down from both sides of his mouth. He felt a refreshing sensation, and his brain couldn't help but clear. Aso Chengshire, who lifted his wine glass and lowered his head to take a small sip, frowned slightly. He began to lower the meat slices into the frying table with a clip in his hand and said, "Are you so confident in your disguise? There is no doubt that when stealing the ledger, it must be in a monitoring blind spot. I certainly have confidence in myself." Just as he picked up a piece of meat and blew it on his lips for 2 breaths, he caught a glimpse of 8 suits of big men rushing in from the entrance of the barbecue restaurant. Uehara Keji paused for a moment, then as if nothing had happened, he put the meat slices into his mouth and said, "Okay, I don't have confidence now. I have a question for you, have you ever fought in a group fight?" Aso Chengshire, who received the signal, squinted his eyes slightly and instinctively clenched the handle of his beer glass. "No," he said, "Boss, where are you going to the restroom from here?" Uehara Keji, whose smile remained on his face, slowly stood up from the chair, and Masashi Aso stood up very tacitly, preparing to leave. The 8 strong men in suits sitting down seemed to have received some notice, all blocking the door in unison. "Brother, please make way for me. I'll go out and use the restroom," said Uehara, who remained calm as he stood at a table, smiling. "Take it away." The leader waved his hand and picked up a beer glass, causing Uehara Keji to burst out in an instant, directly covering his face and smashing it over. Bang! "Chengshire, let's go." Beer and glass shards flew together, and Uehara Keji, whose face suddenly changed, kicked the chair out to block the way with a single kick, then grabbed his friend's hand and ran towards the window. "No way!" Suddenly, one of the 7 bodyguards fell down, but one of them quickly reached out and grabbed the severed Uehara Keji arm, pulling it back. His thick arm locked his throat. Uehara. Turning his head to see this scene, Masashi Aso's pupils suddenly shrank, grabbed a chair, and threw it at the big and thick bodyguard. The broken wood and the cracked suit have become the main theme of the barbecue restaurant at this moment. Feeling a bit weak in locking my arms, I seized the opportunity and grabbed my opponent's crotch with my hands in a claw-like manner. The upper and lower bodies were hit hard at the same time, and the bodyguard's face turned green. He immediately let go of his hands and lay on the ground, bowing down in mourning. Damn it, I don't want to eat barbecue anymore. Shaking his hand, Uehara Keji, whose face was flushed from lack of oxygen, rubbed his neck and cursed. Uehara. Be careful. The sudden exclamation in his ear made Uehara Keji immediately lower his body and dodged the capture of the two strong men from under the table. Then he crawled out from under the table and grabbed the edge of the table with both hands. His veins on the back of his hands erupted, and the entire table was flipped over, blocking all frontal views. Request ticket request follow. Up reading set up a small bowl, end of this chapter. Chapter 8. Never lose in prop competition. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Chapter 8. Never lose in prop competition. A series of clattering sounds suddenly echoed over the entire barbecue restaurant, and the aroma of wine and meat in the air appeared particularly eerie amidst the constant cries of pain. The hot barbecue table pressed straight against the body of a strong bodyguard, and the scorching temperature could cook the flesh even across a shirt and suit. The brutality of the scene made Uehara Keji, who was the initiator, stunned for a moment. Then he quickly signaled to Smuggling to stand behind him, holding onto another tabletop with both hands, ready to flip it over any time and anywhere. Don't come over. Otherwise, I can't guarantee that the next one will become the signature dish of this store. With 7 hands and 8 legs, he rescued his companions from the high-temperature barbecue frying table. The remaining strong men in suits glanced at each other, then exchanged positions and gradually fanned out towards the 2 targets, gradually encircling them step by step. The few customers in the small shop curled up to the far side, trembling with fear. The owner, whose flesh was so painful that his heart was trembling, hid at the cashier, eagerly watching the sudden arrival of the plague god stirring up his shop into a mess. The fight was a fight, and the loss was his hard-earned money. Unfortunately, he still dared not speak out to scold and stop, feeling frustrated. Uehara, have you ever won so many people in a group fight? Although he didn't know how to fight, Aso Narumi still held 2 stools in his hand and posed as he watched the approaching enemies, then stabbed his friend with his elbow. The answer given by Uehara Keji, who was breathing repeatedly, was also concise and clear. No. The strong men in suits, who gradually narrowed the distance between the 2 sides in a fan-shaped enclosure, rubbed their palms together, and Aso Chingsher lowered his eyes to confirm his thin and weak body, which can be said to be thin arms and legs compared to ordinary adult males. This contrast is very strong. You really didn't give any hope in your answer. Hope was fought for by oneself. Remember to run outside on the main road when the fight starts later. Uehara Keji, who was constantly paying attention to the distance between the enemy and us, breathed a sigh of relief. That old police officer has reached an agreement with me. He couldn't have been unaware of such a big commotion happening here. He is probably on his way here now. And now it's the time for the village chief's election campaign. They won't allow big riots on the road. Can you hold on? Who knows, I prefer to challenge my limits. Before he could finish speaking, Uehara Keji, who noticed that his opponent was approaching a dangerous distance, gritted his words. The muscles in his arms under the flower shirt instantly swelled, and the barbecue table, along with the electrified frying table, was once again overturned. Smuggling, who understood everything, threw his 2 sticks towards the suit man closest to him. Boss, I'm sorry. I'll compensate you later. Kicking over the kettle rack with 1 foot, Uehara Keji, who was using 2 long-mouthed kettles for self-defense, sprayed all the hot water out of them. The 2 strong men in suits who avoided the attack from the dining table were the first to take the hit. As soon as the boiling water came into contact with human skin, it burned it red. The pain made the 2 of them stand still and jump around like 2 monkeys with burnt red skin, feeling helpless. There was also a pure burning pain in their mouths. Hiss. Ha. Hiss. Ha. Also Narumi, who was so obedient, immediately bent down to pick up a water bottle that had fallen to the ground and threw it towards the group of strong men in front of him. Realistic. Run. I grabbed my friend's hand and pushed him towards the window. Just as I was about to catch up, several chairs suddenly flew over me, causing him to stumble hard. Hiss. The intense pain swept through every nerve in Uehara Keji's body in an instant, and his handsome features twisted in an instant. Uehara. The strong man who followed closely behind and attacked grabbed the target's shoulder, and Uehara Keji, who turned around, gritted his teeth and kicked towards his knee. An unexpected moment caused the strong man's lower body to instantly lose balance, and the opportunity to restrain himself was a heavy blow piercing his face. Bang! At the moment of nosebleeds flowing, the strong man instantly fell to the ground and fell into a coma. Also Chengshi, who was close to the window, saw the fire extinguisher placed beside him and suddenly lit up. He picked it up and threw it at the strong man rushing towards him. Dang! The crisp movement of the bottle immediately caught Uehara's gaze. A strong man fell in response. Sure, I didn't expect you to look soft and weak, but you're actually a good hand when it comes to fighting. Uehara Keji, who was in pain and kept moving his shoulders, gave his friend a thumbs up. Ha! It seems like we don't need to run anymore. Also Narumi, who had knocked out a person with his own hands, did not feel any discomfort. Instead, he wiped away the sweat on his forehead and turned his gaze to the suit men who had gathered not far away, feeling somewhat conflicted. There are a total of 8 people, except for 2 who are unconscious. There are only 6 who can stand up now. Among these 6, 1 has been grilled by the frying table to the point of covering their waist, and 2 have been scalded by hot water to the point of greatly reducing their combat effectiveness. It seems that playing field games is not your specialty. The back of the flower shirt had already been stained with blood, and Uehara Keji, who had suffered some skin injuries, was still moving his hands and feet, looking at the strong men who had gradually lost confidence with a mischievous smile. The opponent's tenacity and agility completely exceeded their imagination. Uehara Keji, who was gradually grinning, took 2 small steps forward, seemingly intending to press forward step by step. The remaining 6 strong men looked at each other, their hearts alert, while their bodies instinctively took a step back. The next second, they only saw Uehara Keji, who was just about to fight to the end, turn around and run, with a speed comparable to a rabbit seeing a carrot. Run. Ran. Are you just letting those 2 cubs run away like this? Moon Shadow Island, Kawashima Manor. The middle-aged man with a big back in the villa hall was furious and smashed the precious teacup in his hand. 8 people beating 2 people and getting beaten back. I might as well take it to feed pigs to raise you so much money every year. Enough of Kawashima, it's no use getting angry at this time. I've already instructed my people to keep an eye on the surveillance footage of various transportation arteries, and once discovered, there will be an immediate notification. On the sofa, another middle-aged man with a big belly slowly stood up and said with a heavy expression, "Let's put aside the competition between you and me for the village chief position. If this matter is not resolved, we will all be in danger." Hideo Kawashima, who had not been so uneasy for nearly a decade, waved his hand to signal his security chief to go out and rubbed his temples in a gloomy tone. If I hadn't noticed that the ledger had disappeared, I wouldn't have noticed that this honest Ase was coming towards us. She has been on this island for 3 years, probably not an undercover agent from Tokyo, he said. I have checked the person who was with her, and based on the current information, it is indeed a police officer from the police station. What is the man's name and position? Korea Chinsei had a stern expression and spoke in a serious tone. Uehara Keji, the Criminal Investigation Department of the Metropolitan Police Department is investigating a lesson on violent crimes, and the police department is supplementing it. Police Department Supplement. Upon hearing this position, Hideo Kawashima's eyes narrowed slightly and he said, "Can you bribe me? Why did the Jianyang system label my book with a manga? I didn't choose this either." Request ticket request followed. Up reading set up a small bowl, end of this chapter. Chapter 9. Outstanding Graduates of Police Academy. Uehara Keji. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Chapter 9 Outstanding Graduates of Police Academy. Uehara Keji, hiss. It hurts. Can't you apply the medicine lightly? I'm an injured person now. Do you understand the injured person? Do you know what this means? Moon Shadow Island Clinic, Ase Doctor's Office. The vast room was filled with only the howling of Uehara Keji, which was like killing a pig. Masashi Aso, who had changed into a white coat and held a disinfection tool in his hand, although his face was black, his movements were not slow at all. The damaged floral shirt was crumpled into a ball and thrown into the trash can. The man, who was undergoing back disinfection with his bare upper body, gritted his teeth in pain and his facial features danced online. You should be grateful that they didn't carry guns or hit you with a blade, otherwise it's not just a skin injury. After completing the medication application, Aso Chingsher took out the medical bandage and skillfully performed a simple bandage on his friend, revealing a hint of happiness both inside and outside the words. Uehara Keiji was somewhat skeptical. If they were holding guns or knives, it would be another way of playing. Do you understand how to adapt flexibly? Ma Gingsher, who habitually tied a knot in the bandage, rolled his eyes and remained silent. He stood up, took off his gloves, and threw them into the trash can. Hey! No, you actually changed this bow for me. I'm running out of clothes, will you let me wear this bow when I go out later? What's not allowed? Your old Mitsubishi in Tokyo is still pink, what's wrong with the bow? Ma Shingsher, who poured himself a cup of water from a teacup, shrugged and couldn't help but laugh. That's called a fierce male fan, you don't understand. Uehara Keiji, who was extremely confident in his taste, corrected his title seriously. It's different from a teenage fan. Stop talking nonsense here. Now let's think about what we should do later. When will your colleagues be able to support us? How long will we be hiding in the clinic? Troops for the enemy, earth for floods. What else can I do? I'm not a Superman who can wear underpants and then rush into the drug dealer's nest to make those guys stand out. Compared to the worried Aso Narumi, Uehara Keiji was noticeably calmer. He looked up at the clock hanging on the snow-white wall and said contentedly, it won't take too much time from Tokyo to Moon Shadow Island, and Sato should be arriving soon. That's what I'm worried about. The other side must also know that time is tight. What if someone were to rush into the clinic and shoot us out regardless of the safety of those patients and nurses? Aso Chingsher has no doubt that group of people can definitely do such a thing now. Then let's go out. As a police officer, I will never allow such a thing to happen, so I will definitely surrender and let that group of people invite us back for an interview, said Uehara Keiji with a clear expression of righteousness. Aso Chingsher blinked in shock, feeling that there might be something wrong with the human brain circuit. Since both sides were captured, why did you waste so much effort running away before? The first time is catch, the second time is please, and the meaning behind it is different. Perhaps sensing the confusion in my friend's eyes, Uehara restrained himself and smiled. He stood up from the bench and moved his shoulder, saying, don't forget, our ultimate goal has always been Kawashima Hideo and Kuriyama Shinji, haven't we? Aso Chingsher paused as he lowered his head to drink tea, frowned, and said, wait a moment, what do you mean? Don't you want to catch the killer of your family with your own hands? Uehara's restrained questioning caused Aso Narumi to fall into silence, but the flickering gaze in his eyes undoubtedly explained everything. To capture a thief, first capture the king. I don't have much interest in those small underground minions. The only way to end this drug network is to truly arrest the leaders such as Hideo Kawashima. The problem is that I am not familiar with them, and with their influence, it is easy to detect that I am a police officer from Tokyo. Once I deliberately approach them, it is easy to be on guard. Strolling to his desk, he casually took out a pen from the pen holder, opened a notebook, and wrote the names of 2 targets in the blank space. With a smile, Uehara Keji drew a circle on the names, Kuroichi Shinji, and Kawashima Hideo. In the past 6 months, I have carefully investigated and collected the personalities of these 2 people. Heian Shinji is a typical politician personality, so he can quickly rise to become the new village chief after the death of the former village chief. This kind of person is best dealt with, as long as he understands that my presence is both a threat and a help to him. He will try to show a little sincerity to personally contact me. As for Hideo Kawashima, he is a very profitable businessman. Although he has always wanted to develop in the direction of politicians, his profit-trading thinking has always been limited to him, as can be seen from his failure in several attempts to compete for village chief. So after experiencing a failed arrest, as a businessman, the first thing that came to his mind was to use money to bribe me, just like he used to bribe other police officers. Based on the personalities of these 2 people, I think they should have completed their meeting now and have already made 2 or even more quotations to prepare to bribe you and me. Because my sensitive identity as a Tokyo police officer can make them feel tricky, and your visit to Moon Shadow Island 3 years ago is likely to be understood by them as an undercover agent sent by the Tokyo police to the island 3 years in advance. The most important thing is that your deliberately disguised identity will make it impossible for them to find this woman, Shinichi Ase, in a short period of time. This is also one of the reasons why I brought you into the scene. So, hastily taking down the assassin in their analysis would undoubtedly lead Tokyo police to be more suspicious of Moon Island's methods. Therefore, under this premise, bribery has become a solution that can help them reach a consensus. That's also why those bodyguards didn't know how to use guns when they were at the barbecue restaurant. After more than a decade of enjoying life, they wouldn't want to give up everything they had on the surface and run away unless absolutely necessary. One by one, Uehara Keji recounted his plans and speculations, which made Masanori couldn't help but open his mouth and want to say something, but in the end, he couldn't say anything. He even calculated to disguise himself as a girl on the island for 3 years, becoming evidence that could make Heian Shinji and Kawashima Infu even more wary. He didn't know what to say for a moment. That's why the first time we are arrested, we must escape the heavens, because only in this way can we have a relatively equal opportunity to talk to these 2 people. If the first arrest is successful, then what awaits us is the torture and threats from the drug trafficking group. But if we fail the first time, they will use various methods to invite us to the negotiation table for a face-to-face negotiation. And this is the opportunity to get closer to them without appearing deliberate or causing them to doubt and distance themselves. But how do you know they will want to negotiate next? Also Chingshir spun his teacup and asked in a condensed voice. Time, they can't afford it. If you disguise your identity and stay on the island for 3 years, they will think that you have already collected something, and stealing accounting books is one of the evidence. So they will definitely want to finish their work and bow down to the enemy first. Uehara Keiji wrote down the English word for time with the tip of his pen and drew a heavy circle on it. Negotiate first, if the negotiation breaks down, take action directly. Request for tickets and follow. Up reading. Set up a small bowl. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. I am eternal with evil. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. I am eternal with evil. In this plan, Masashi Aso's experience of being active on Moon Shadow Island as an honest ase over the past 3 years is crucial. If it weren't for this experience, it would be difficult to deceive 2 smart people, Hideo Kawashima and Shinji Kuriyama. When they cannot find any information about the woman, Ase Shinichi, from 3 years ago in a short period of time, and all the information displayed on the surface starts with her identity as a doctor on Tsukikijima from 3 years ago, then naturally they will shift their suspicion to Tokyo police undercover agents. In this way, a logical loop was formed by matching up with the police officer Uehara Keiji who came to the island for vacation, forming a logical loop. the police dispatched undercover agents, who began their investigation as doctors, and police personnel met under the guise of vacation. If you didn't say it, I really wouldn't know that my identity was so important in your plan. Also Chingshir, sitting on the swivel chair with a teacup in his hand, lowered his head and took a sip of the warm tea, sighing, "It's really dangerous to be friends with a police officer like you. So you regret now? There's still time." Struggling to turn the back of your hand to open the bandage that was tied into a bow, he restrained himself and gasped for breath. "With just your mouth, I believe you have a ghost. To be honest, I have always been curious about something coming true. Where did you learn the ability to change your voice freely without a voice changer? How long does it take to learn?" "Can I learn it?" said Uehara, who suddenly changed his natural voice and had a slightly disordered breathing throughout the entire Kashiwa universe. People who can disguise themselves perfectly without the need for sound transformers can only think of those two big shots in their minds for the first time, the new Godmother Belmod and the new version of the Black Feather Quick Dough. As a result, Shinichi Kudo himself pulled his crotch to the point where he needed a doctor's voice changer. No, it seems that the beautiful witch on Mermaid Island disguised herself as an old lady doesn't need a voice changer. Besides, Uehara Keji can't remember anyone else for the time being. After all, Conan is too long, and before his travels, he would only watch the movie version with declining reviews every year. How can he still remember so many people? It's just a simple fake voice technique. I only learned it for a year or two in my junior year, and I learned it along the way. As if to prove that what I said was simple was indeed true, Also Chingshir changed his voice line, and upon hearing this, his eyes widened as he restrained himself. "Can you still simulate my voice?" So I said, "This thing is quite simple, at least for me." Ma Gingshir, who had turned back to Eujian, had no self-awareness as a top student, and said it was as ordinary as eating and drinking water. "Can you teach me?" Uehara Keiji's eyes were filled with irresistible hope. "You can wait until you return to Tokyo, but it's agreed beforehand that this thing varies from person to person. It's a personal habit of Aso Shigeru to say ugly things first, otherwise if Uehara doesn't learn to think he's hiding something, it's not good." "No problem." At the same time as I responded, I couldn't help but pause for a moment when I felt the sound of Uehara restraining himself from the vibration of the phone. Taking out the phone and turning on the screen, it was clearly an email sent by Miyako Sato. "How about it? Has your colleague arrived?" Also Chingshir couldn't help but brighten his eyes when he saw this action. Uehara Keiji was about to say something, but was interrupted by a hurried knocking at the door. Dr. Ase is not good." A few people wearing black suits and sunglasses are holding guns and pointing their names, saying they want you and your friends to go out, otherwise they will shoot the people in the clinic. Upon hearing this, Uehara Keiji and Aso Narumi exchanged a glance, both reading a meaning from each other's eyes. "Here we go. Let's go, it's time to take the last and most dangerous step. Although I'm sorry for involving you as an ordinary doctor, I don't think you'll blame me." Uehara Keiji, who was still wearing a bandage on his upper body, smiled and said, "Not only will he not blame you, but he is also very grateful to you." Aso Narumi, who had put down his teacup, turned around and reached out to open the door to the office. At the entrance of the clinic, a black SUV was parked horizontally, and several strong men in black suits and sunglasses aimed firearms at several nurses who were scared and trembling on the ground. "Mr. Uehara, Miss Ase, please don't make it difficult for us. Get in the car." The person in black, led by the leader, saw the target appear with both hands raised high and immediately signaled to his subordinates to open the door of the SUV. "The car is good, but it's a pity to drive it for you." Before getting on the car, Uehara Keiji glanced at the SUV's design and didn't forget to comment. "If Mr. Uehara likes it, I can give you the same model of this car as a gift." More than 10 minutes later, the lobby on the first floor of Kawashima Manor. Sitting on the sofa with a big back, the middle-aged man pushed the brewed tea in front of Uehara Keji and Aso Narumi with his own hands. Then, leaning against the backrest of the sofa, he crossed his legs and smiled with one hand, making a "please" gesture. The current village chief of Moon Shadow Island, Heian Shinji, who was bloated, did not hide it. Instead, he showed great sincerity and sat with them on the single sofa to their left. "Just drop off the car, I think you might have made a mistake, Mr. Kawashima. I'm not that kind of person." Just as he reached out and touched the teacup, Uehara Keji couldn't help but let go of his hand upon hearing the words. He smiled with a smile on his lips, his gaze wandering back and forth between Kawashima Hideo and Kuriyama Shinji. One thin, one fat. The former wears a provocative purple suit, while the latter is a regular blue suit. Just by dressing up, it is enough to see the personality differences between Ifu Kawashima and Shinji Kuriyama. We've all reached this point, we don't speak in secret when we speak openly. Black Rock-chan crossed his fingers across his abdomen and said in a deep voice, "Mr. Uehara, I wonder how much money you need to return the stolen ledger to us." Heian Village Chief, we are police officers. We have all received strict training and have secretly sworn to the police emblem in our hearts before joining. Looking playfully at Kuriyama Shinji as he spoke, the smile on Uehara Keji's face showed an undisguised distance. Since we have all reached this point, and the accounts have also been in the hands of the police, do you think there is still room for redemption? 10 million. Under the gaze of the bodyguards around him, wealthy, Hideo Kawashima raised his right index finger and offered a price tag. "Mr. Uehara, you intentionally used a stone to smash the glass to make us discover you. I'm afraid you have saved up the idea of cooperating with us after reading the account books." "No, Mr. Kawashima, you're overthinking it. After reading the account book, I only felt angry." Faced with the 10 million yuan restraint, he remained unwavering. "As a police officer, I have always been incompatible with evil." 20 million. Heian Shinji clapped his hands, and his trusted subordinate standing behind him all placed suitcases on the large coffee table. The pitch-black lid bounced open, revealing the tempting cash inside. Uehara restrained himself with a slight movement, reached out and played with a stack of banknotes, with a smile on his lips that didn't diminish. "I'm sorry, both of you. Our teeth are quite hard, and I'm afraid we won't be able to digest these. 30 million yuan, and we are also willing to attract 2 people to join our business and enjoy dividends." Kawashima Hideo and Kuriyama Shinji glanced at each other and saw satisfaction in each other's eyes. Everything is within their plan. As long as we get through this crisis, it's good. No. Seeing that Yuan Keiji seemed to want to say something more, Aso Chingsher, who was always silent on the side, subtly poked his elbow, and the former's voice suddenly split. "TSK, the exciting conditions, I have to say the two of you are really accurate in judging people. Request for tickets and follow. Up reading set up a small bowl, end of this chapter.